Hey fellow nerds, if you wanted to know the personality of Rajendra Chola, you just have to look at this sculpture. It is of him being crowned by Shiva and Parvati. Look at his smile. Look how happy he is. Behind his smile, he hides the incessant need for destruction and subjugation of all that stand in his way, and the incessant need to bring destruction untold, as seen by the inscription in the Chalukya Empire with him as a prince leading a 1,000,000 people strong army into the Chalukya Empire and wreaking havoc untold. What would a prince like that look like once he takes the throne? Let's find out. Rajendra Chola took the throne of the Chola Empire in 1014 AD, and for the first few years we don't have any inscriptions about his exploits. But in 1018 AD he installed his son Rajadhiraja as his co-regent and began his conquest of Sri Lanka. In this conquest he would try and capture the rest of the island, and in the process, he ended up capturing the family jewels of the Pandyan Empire, which the Cholas had been trying to capture since Parantaka I. And he took over the Sinhala throne, capturing all of the royal family and taking them to the Chola country to be jailed. Mahavamsa writes of the carnage that the Chola army brought to Sri Lanka. He claims that the Chola army destroyed many Buddhist monasteries in search of treasure. That's very Viking of them. The Cholas themselves stay silent on the matter of the destruction of Sri Lanka, unlike the invasion that his father conducted. After defeating the Sinhala king, he had acquired the gems of the Pandyan family and he returned to the Chola Empire with them. He paraded them in a victory parade in Pandya and Chera countries in order to demoralize any thought of rebellion. Oh, brutal. But despite that, there was one rebellion in the Chera country, a rebellion that he swiftly crushed. You see, in 1015 AD, Jaisimha II had become the emperor of Chalukya Empire. Soon after his ascension, he tried to recover the land he lost to the Cholas just one generation ago, and at first he did see some success since the bulk of the Chola armies were in Sri Lanka at the time. What's more is that the eastern Chalukya king Vimaladitya, who had married Rajendra Chola's sister Kundavai, had also died around this time, leaving two princes behind. One that was birthed by Rajendra Chola's sister Raja Narendra, and another by the name of Vijayaditya VII. This led to another civil war in the eastern Chalukya country. The moment Rajendra had returned from suppressing rebellion in the Chera country, he had to turn towards the eastern Chalukya Empire and support his nephew's claim to the throne. With the combined might of Rajendra and Narendra, the faction that the Chola Empire supported won. But there was no time for the rest or even a proper coronation for Narendra, for they had to combine their forces and turn west to reconquer the land lost to Jaisimha. The two met the western Chalukya forces in the Battle of Maski in 1019 AD, managing to reconquer lost land. The allied forces did not follow the Chalukyan king across the Tungabhadra river, which was the old border between the Chola and Chalukya Empire, because they had decided to go on a different extraordinary journey. With their combined forces, they returned to eastern Chalukya Empire, not to install my man Narendra as the new king and have his coronation, but to continue marching northwards across Kalinga, all the way to the river Ganga. Though the emperor himself stopped at the banks of the river Godavari, and he returned to ensure that there were no attacks on his empire. But the majority of his forces crossed the river and reached the Pala Empire. A little backstory on the Pala Empire. Only a century before this, three major empires were locked in constant battle over Kannauj or Western UP in North India. Those three were Rashtrakutas, Gujarapatiranas, and the Palas. These three were considered the superpowers of ancient India in the time between the fall of Gupta Empire and the rise of the Chola Empire. This time period is called the tripartite struggle, and I'll make a video on it. So I won't spoil who won, but this conflict between the Cholas and the Palas showed the change in superpower status. It only took 2 years for the Chola army to defeat the Pala and all its neighboring kingdoms in North India, thus extending the reach of Chola Empire across the whole eastern seaboard of India. While the Chola Empire never really controlled these areas directly, this battle made sure that they would no longer be a trade competition. The army then returned with the Ganga water taken from Bengal and consecrated a new temple called Gangai Konda Choleshwara, or the Lord of the Chola king who subjugated Ganga. Around it was built a new Chola capital, which was called Gangai Konda Cholapuram. Absolutely meta. And as Narendra returned to Eastern Chalukya, he was coronated in 1022 AD when Rajendra Chola married his daughter off to him. But wouldn't that make them cousins? This is a South Indian king we are talking about. Now on to the part that you have been waiting for this whole series about the Cholas. Foreign imperialism? Foreign imperialism. There is a false notion around in certain circles of historians that seems to say that an Indian empire never conquered outside of India. And while there are some contentious rebuttals to that, which would prompt the question that what is an Indian empire? This one example can be an uncontested example of an Indian empire attacking a foreign power. I'm talking about Rajendra Chola's attack on the Srivijaya Empire of modern day Sumatra. You see, while the Chola Empire controlled the Indian side of trade with China almost completely by this point, there was a choke point on the way to China called the Malacca Strait, and it was under the Srivijayan Empire. Now the historians don't exactly know why the Cholas attacked them, seeing as they were in good relations with the Cholas and levied minimal taxes to the goods going to the Chola Empire. But it seems that Rajendra Chola wanted to be the sole intermediary in between the trade between the Western countries and China. So they attacked in one of the largest naval expeditions in anywhere in the world. And in 1025 AD, the Srivijaya Empire bent the knee to the Cholas. Hey, that's exactly 1000 years ago. But strangely enough, Rajendra Chola did not conquer them at all when he absolutely could have. After defeating them, Rajendra Chola reinstalled the same exact king of the same exact dynasty back to the throne of Srivijaya Empire, that in exchange for some trade advantages. But they sacked the capitals enough that the dynasty didn't stay around for more than one generation. As this region saw the fall of the empire and splintering into multiple smaller kingdoms, most of these kingdoms lacked the ability to become seafaring traders and return to being farmers. This allowed for Tamil traders to take over all of the trade in Southeast Asia. While there was no geopolitical conquest of Southeast Asia and the Cholas didn't exert any royal hegemony over them, the economic control was absolute. And even as the Chola Empire withered away geopolitically over the next 2 centuries, it remained rich as its traders owned all of the sea trade around southern India. That's in no way a small thing. Even as by the end of the century, a new dynasty would take over the Srivijaya Empire and the empire would return to its former glory, it would continue to accept Chola influence over it. Rajendra Chola would die in 1044 AD, having made Chola Empire a seafaring superpower. His wife Viramaha Devi would commit sati upon the death of her husband, and their remains would be put into the same tomb as each other. He was succeeded by his eldest son Rajadhiraja I, who wouldn't stay on the throne for too long, and by 1070 AD, three of his sons would cycle through the throne before another stable king could take over. Rajendra Chola's legacy is a complicated one. While we know of his cruelty during his conquests, we also know of his kindness after the conquest. He left the conquered kings in their place and supported them through the hardships that came their way. He was a lover of arts and had composed many poems for his love for Shiva. He even built many temples and even built a whole new capital. Multiple sources state that the last few years of his reign were some of the most peaceful and prosperous for the region. I think it's important we do not impose our modern sensibilities over ancient kings. From their cruelty in conquest to the propensity of their queens to commit sati after their husband's death, to their almost entitled attitude towards their conquered lands, a lot of what they did can be considered sacrilegious to our modern sensibilities. But you have to understand that thus were the times. And when we later talk about, say, the cruelty of the Muslim invasions, you have to keep in mind that thus were the times. And remember the cruelty of the kings that came before them across the world and in India. But we can judge the British, can't we? Oh, of course. They were a modern empire and they should have known better. Because see, the difference is that after the colonialization of the Cholas, everyone profited. Their colonies became richer and more culturally diverse. While after the British colonialization, all of their colonies suffered manifold, except maybe Hong Kong. Anyway, tangent over. In the next video, we will talk about the slow decay of the Chola Empire that happened after the death of Rajendra Chola. See you next time.